ghostly figures of headless coachmen, a nun believed to have been bricked up within the walls that appears and vanishes mysteriously, a screaming girl at the window of the balloon room, and dragging footsteps in empty halls. The scene of the ghostly visitations is the rectory at Borley.
There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
What's up? It's us again, and it's episode 87.
Yeah, it's going to be a good show. It's about the Borley Rectory, right?
Borley Rectory, yeah. We wanted to do another paranormal one. This has been requested at least 2 times, maybe more. Actually, I want to say that, and I probably mentioned this book before, but I have one of those old Reader's Digest compilation books, Strange Stories, Amazing Facts.
Yeah.
The one with the red cover and the black spine.
Yeah.
And it came out in the late 60s or early 70s, something like that. And it had something about Borley Rectory in it. So I remember like seeing the pictures of the house and the pictures of like the weird writing on the wall and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was kind of cool when somebody requested, because I had sort of forgotten all about it, even though I'd always found it a fascinating story from back in the old days. But
you've been researching it for a week now already, pretty much.
For 3 or 4 days.
3 or 4 days.
I've just been kind of looking into different stuff about it.
Okay.
And I actually wrote about it. There's a little section about it in my book, The Unseen Hand, also.
Yeah.
So I know a little bit about it there. And there's other kind of cool shit about it. There's a movie that came out last year that's based on it and stuff like that. So, we'll probably talk about that a little bit as well.
All right.
But first, let's do our kind of shout-outs type stuff.
Okay.
The second volume of The Faceless Villain, my true crime book. Yeah. I just finished chapter 11.
Yeah.
So it only has... I think it has 18, it's going to have 18 chapters.
So almost done.
So it's more than half done at this point.
And then we got to go in the studio and record it to get on the audio book.
Yeah.
So we're probably looking at about a month.
Yeah, something like that. We'll see.
Around there, right.
But, the thing is, the reason this particular chapter took me such a long time is because, and I kind of said this in the introduction of the book too, is that every time you go researching unsolved murders, I kept coming across other ones.
Right.
Like, that I didn't know. And, because obviously I'm not a dummy. Like, I had made, a huge outline of all the cases that I wanted to put in it. I'm like, okay, that's it. That's what I'm going to put in here.
But each time you find one, it starts pulling you.
Like, each time, if I'm talking about, the Zodiac Killer or something like that, then there's all these other murders that are tangential, that are related. Right. Or they think it might have been the same guy, or it might have been this. So what,
you're constantly kind of getting pulled down another direction, should I take it this way? Is that one of the things?
That's kind of what's happening. Okay. It's like in one of the last chapters I was writing about the murder of Sister Kathy Sesnick, which was, you remember that one. We saw the documentary, it's called The Keepers on Netflix, was about that. Yeah. Okay, and they mentioned on that documentary that there was another very similar murder that happened a month after hers of this woman named Joyce Malecki. But what they didn't say, and I got that one in there, but what they didn't say was that there was 2 more. Wow. The next year, one the following year and then one a year after that. And they were also very similar, and they didn't even mention those in the documentary. And I only found that out by researching the Joyce Malecki case and researching that. And then I was like, what are these other 2 in Baltimore that happened also? So it's I keep coming up with new ones and having them go back and stick them in the book.
That one about the nun, the dead nun, was bizarre because it seems to be that the priests were pimping out the little girls at the school, and then she found out about it and they killed her. That's what it looks like.
It might have been. I'm not real sure. I'm not saying that.
And the priests were pimping the girls out to the cops and the local politicians. Yes, and this is what, back in the 50s, I think it was.
No, 60s. It was 1969, 1970.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I remember it was something else.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
In light of certain things that are going down today, rumors going on today, you're like, damn, how long has stuff like that been going on?
Always.
Man.
It's always gone on. It's just, nowadays people are just more, I don't think it's more common now. I just think it's people.
I think the internet's exposing it.
Well, yeah, and it's more acceptable to talk about it. I think if it happened back in like the 50s or 60s, people were like, sure, we don't talk about that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Priests pimping out the schoolgirls to the damn cops.
Yeah.
That's some bizarre shit.
Yeah, there was some fucked up shit going on.
Yeah, and that's not something you think that might happen in some kind of weird semi-civilized place, in another country, but, the United States.
Man, yeah, shit goes on like that all the time. Like I said, I don't know. I'm not saying that particularly that one priest, Reverend Maskell, he's dead now, but I'm not saying he wasn't a piece of shit. I don't know if he had her murdered, and the only reason that I say that is because of the other 3 murders. The more I looked into these other 3 murders that happened over the following
so this case is in the book.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
That was a good case.
The more I looked into that, those 3 murders were awfully similar to hers, even down to like weird little details. So I kind of think maybe it was a serial killer thing, but I'm not sure.
Don't spoil it. You know what I mean? If they want to know more about it, they got to get book 2.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to go all in.
Besides, that's just one case, and there's going to be dozens and dozens.
Yeah, there's a shit ton of it. Then I'm just like and I'm finding more all the time. I found like 3 in New Zealand that I wasn't even looking for.
Yeah, unsolved murders, man. It's a bottomless. It's a bottomless pit.
It's a rabbit hole. You find one, and you just keep finding other ones, which I guess is kind of depressing, but
people are bad.
They are. And it's shocking how many of them don't get solved. Let's see, what else? Oh, our latest movie review was Lone Wolf and Cub.
Oh, yeah.
The 6 movie series.
Yeah.
So if you had this is a little bit different than the movies we usually review. So if you haven't checked that out, you should go check that out.
Yeah, it's weird because like some of our subscribers, some of them that we talk to, on other platforms, some of them we'll talk to, like Valtrina, we'll talk to her personally. She's like, God, you guys know that one? She it was weird because, some of our subscribers like stuff like Kung Fu movies.
Who doesn't love, everybody loves Kung Fu.
So there's varied tastes and you never know what's going to happen, with 13 o'clock fans, they like everything.
Yeah. Well, in a way, I think that's kind of what's cool about our show, and we have really varied interests also.
Yeah.
Like, I'm super into horror and stuff like that, but I like a lot of other stuff too.
Right.
So, and I feel like a lot of people have that, and so I think it's good to get kind of a broad sort of thing.
Kind of spread it out.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, like our next probably 5 movie reviews are going to be horror movies, probably.
Yeah.
Well, the next one definitely is because it's already done. But the next 4 that we have written down.
Yeah, we can tease. I think the next one is coming out.
Can we say?
Yeah.
Do you want me to just say what letter it starts with?
Yeah, go ahead. What letter?
It starts with a P.
That's right.
And ends with an M.
Yeah, that's right. The next movie review that's going to come out soon. This is a teaser now. Phantasm.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't really a teaser. You just told them. Phantasm.
That's true.
That's coming out on Friday.
You got it.
But and then we've already like pretty much planned what the next 4 are going to be after that, and they're pretty much all.
Already got the videos logged up. We've already watched them actually.
Yeah, they're all horror movies. I think. Right. And
we're kind of going to go down kind of like an H.P. Lovecraft direction for a little while too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was looking at the movies that we picked. We didn't really mean to. It was just kind of happened.
Got into some Lovecraftian.
We got into some
Lovecraftian action.
Yeah, it's some little byways back there. But so that'll be the next kind of stuff. And also, I'd like to remind everybody that if you'd like to support the show, we have a Patreon page at patreon.com/13o'clock podcast. And we also have, if you don't like Patreon, because I know people don't, then you can go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account. Yeah. Also, I want to say hi to Trina because we were talking to her again over Facebook on Saturday night. We were sitting around watching movies, getting drunk.
I was loaded, man. You were loaded too.
Oh, yeah. Well, we drank a lot.
We didn't go out. We just stayed in.
Yeah, well, because we have to go out on Monday night, which is going to be the night before this show goes up.
And one mojito led to another, and then the next thing you know,
you know how
I accidentally called Valtrina on Facebook.
They were
she
messaging.
replied, so I said, "Fuck it, okay, we'll talk.
We'll just talk.
We'll just talk on a speakerphone." And we were on there for like 3 hours.
I know. We ended up talking to her till like 2 in the morning. We're like talking about movies and shit. We were watching.
Cool.
I don't remember what movie we were watching.
Oh man! Well, we started off. We
watched Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Yeah.
And then we watched. And then I put on 2 Evil Eyes. But then I was talking and I wasn't really paying attention.
Right.
I haven't seen that movie in a really long time.
Beverly Hills Cop is a good series. I forgot how good it was.
Yeah.
It's as good as I remember.
It actually held up.
Yeah.
I think it's still funny.
Well, I still got movie 3 to watch on Blu-ray.
Yeah,
and that's supposed to be the worst one.
The third one of anything is usually the worst one.
I kind of think that I saw it when it came out. It came out a lot later than the other ones, like 10 years later. And I think I saw it.
See, I didn't even know there was a third one.
I think I got out of the Army and I saw that thing playing on a matinee sometime in the 90s, maybe like the mid-90s, and I said, I'm going to go watch that. But it seemed kind of out of place. It was like, it was a long time ago that...
Yeah, it's like, why would they bother
Why would they bother like
time?
10 years later? Yeah, something like that. It was weird.
Well, I guess we'll see what it's...
I remember thinking it was kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Maybe it's better than I remembered it.
Sometimes movies surprise... I find that it's either one way or the other. Movies like a lot better than you remembered it, or it was a way worse than you remember it.
I want to see Vampire in Brooklyn. I haven't seen that in forever. I liked it when it came out.
I remember kind of liking that. I don't remember much about it, though.
It was kind of like Eddie Murphy's version of Blackula.
Yeah.
And Blackula and Scream were excellent vampire movies. They're not a joke.
Yeah, like no lie. Those are actually really good movies.
And Anne Rice used those as a lot of inspiration for what a vampire culture would be like.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's funny because I think people think of them, I guess because of the titles, they think of them as like this cheesy blaxploitation.
But they weren't.
But they're really not. They're actually pretty serious.
Yeah, they were solid vampire movies.
And it's actually like the guy that plays Blackula is awesome. He was on Star Trek too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he played Dr. Daystrom, remember? Made the M5.
Yeah, that's right.
The M5 computer.
And he's got like that cool voice.
Yeah, right,
With that, yeah. So I really like those movies. And Blackula had that whole like voodoo thing going on. And I love that. And
his name wasn't Blackula. Dracula turned him into a vampire and called him Blackula.
Yeah.
And
that wasn't his name.
That wasn't his name, right.
What was it? His name was Mama Walde. Right?
Mama Walde, yeah. Mama Walde. He was like an African prince who was... working with another guy to try to stop the slave trade. And it turned out Dracula had instituted the slave trade. And when he found out Mama Walde was going to stop the slave trade, Dracula killed him.
Yeah.
And turned him into a vampire. And sealed him up inside of a damn crypt. Later on, 2 gay guys, a black one and a white one, in the 1970s, bought that house and found the crypt and let him out. Dracula drank some black dudes. Or drank some gay dudes.
Yeah.
To reconstitute himself. Reconstitute himself.
Tang.
That's right. Well, you know how gay men have good tastes. They saw that house. Oh, we must have this.
Well, yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It was a pretty kick-ass house. I was like, yeah, man, I agree with you.
They found the crypt, and there was a skeleton next to it, and that's Mama Walde's wife.
Yeah.
Remember, they sealed her alive outside the crypt until she, died of starvation or something. Died of thirst.
Bastards.
Yeah. It's a good flick. But if you guys ever want to see kind of a cool Dracula series or vampire series, see Blackula and Blackula Scream.
Yeah, they're both really good.
Yeah, pretty cool.
All right, so now let's do the news story. And I like when this happens because I can do some self-pimping.
That's right. Sometimes a woman's got to pimp herself.
That didn't come out quite the way
sometimes.
I intended. You know what
Somebody got to pay these bills.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it just, and I swear to God I did not do this on purpose, but whenever we're doing like a paranormal topic, I always try to find like a paranormal type news story. So I'm searching through, like the Google search for paranormal news or whatever, and lo and behold, they're on the Den of Geek blog, which I usually read for their Walking Dead reviews and whatnot. They had an interview
with the legendary Keith Linder.
That's right. And as it turned out, and it was just dated like a couple of days ago. Now it turns out that there is a new book coming out about the Keith Linder, quote unquote, Demons in Seattle haunting.
Now, for those of you who are new to the show, Jenny wrote a book about the Keith Linder case. She was the first person to ever write about that case.
I wrote it in late 2016.
Right. A guy that we work with, a British parapsychologist that we work with, Steve Mera, went from the UK to Keith Linder's house here in the United States to investigate in Seattle. And found a bunch of AVPs and EVPs and brought back some data and gave his opinion of what was going on at Linder's place. Of course, we've yet to review this new book. We don't know anything about it. So
it just came out on April 15th, Sunday, which was 2 days before this show goes up.
So we don't know if the case has evolved or, what the book says.
It's called The Bothell Hell House.
Okay.
Poltergeists of Washington State.
Right.
That's what the book is called.
It's a sensational title. I'm going to go ahead and reserve judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sensational.
Mine is called House of Fire and Whispers.
That's right.
Now, what I did was, because I based it entirely off Steve Mara's recollections and his case files and all of the data that he collected while he was there. So mine kind of goes into the claims that Keith Linder made about what he saw prior to Steve Mara getting there, because he had lived there for like 4 years before Steve Mara came.
Mm-hmm.
And there had been other ghost hunting teams in and out of there, including Zach and all the ghost hunter, ghost adventure people. They had been there also.
Face me, demon. Zach.
Then it scratched me. But
okay.
It messed up his hair. Maybe that's what he uses as.
If that's his hair.
The ghost
I guess that's
his hair. Just constantly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so mine kind of focuses more on, even though it goes into stuff that happened before Steve Mara got there, it's kind of mostly from Steve's point of view, talks about what he saw. And Don Phillips, who was his
it was his
colleague,
worked with him,
that they both went there.
He was
and
like
they
the
were
special audio technician.
And he's sort of like, I don't want to use the word medium, but he's kind of like one of those.
They call him a catalyst.
Yeah, that he's supposed to be like, he's around and more paranormal shit.
He evidently has this kind of personality that if you get him into a certain place where there's paranormal stuff has a tendency to happen, his personality can kind of accentuate it and kick it up a notch.
Yeah.
Which, that kind of goes along with some of the stuff that I've observed. So, you know what I mean? I can't, discount that.
Yeah.
It's just a possibility.
Right.
I think maybe there are certain people that have a certain kind of energy or some kind of a character, some kind of quality about them to where shit goes down if they're around.
Yeah.
Or it's more likely to go down.
Yeah, and I think that's what his thing is.
That's what his claim to fame is.
Yeah. So the thing is, I don't know if this new book is going to be any good. Now, it should be noted that Keith Linder does not live in this house anymore. He moved away from it in 2016, I believe.
And he's still investigating his own case.
Well, I guess. Or either that or someone approached him
to do memoirs.
To do a memoir type of thing.
Right.
He actually did read my book before I published it, and he just made a couple minor corrections.
Right. He liked your book.
Yeah, he did. So, so it's not a case of what he just thought I did a hack job and he got somebody else to write it. It was kind of a thing.
Talking to him, from what I remember, he said he also one day wanted to do his
there was a lot of stuff that he had seen. Like I said, mine is mostly from Steve Mara's perspective because, he co-wrote the book with me and it was all from his.
So it's going to be kind of like additional testimony. If you're interested in the case, or if you're interested in the first book that Jenny wrote, you probably would want to buy that book also. Probably an interesting read.
Yeah, and I'm actually planning on reading it because I find that a really interesting case.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how accurate a lot of the stuff that Keith said that he saw before anybody got there was, but I mean, we've known Steve Mara long enough that if he goes to a house and he says he saw X, Y, and Z, or he heard X, Y, and Z, then I'm way more inclined to believe that.
He's a reliable observer.
Yeah.
And he does do a good job of documenting what he observes and what other people observe. And he's pretty good at coming up with theories to explain possibly what could be going on. And
what
I always liked about Steve, what's so classy about Steve, is that he's kind of committal.
Yeah.
About, he says, this is what we believe happened. This is what we saw. This is what that person told me that they saw. And he just kind of leaves it up to the...
Which is a lot of the same way that I approach things as well. It's just kind of like, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, provided, what you say isn't too insane.
Well, what else are you going to do? If you don't see it, you can only report what somebody told you they
that's
saw.
all you can do. Right. And that's what I try to do with this book. It's like I said, I'll believe Steve when he said, I saw this X, Y, and Z. He let me listen to the EVPs.
Yeah, and matter of fact, the links to these EVPs and AVPs are right there on your...
They're in the audio. The ebook.
The ebook, that's right.
They're in the ebook, yeah.
And you can hear them. I've heard them. I've heard the same thing that
they're pretty spooky.
It's weird.
They are very spooky. Weird. And a lot of them are very clear. They're some of the clearest EVPs I've ever heard. Yeah, and intelligent. They seem to be answering questions.
And it's the weirdest thing because you have two people on screen talking to one another, and it seems normal until you go back and listen to it again, and in between all their talking, you hear like a word spoken out loud.
Yeah, like someone else is there, but they're not.
Right. And you know there's nobody else in the room. It's almost, what's weird is that sometimes they sound like words or a human voice sound like that, but they don't sound, there's almost something kind of, almost like it's an audio phenomenon.
Yeah.
Because they didn't hear it at the time.
Yeah, most of them
it's almost like an acoustical phenomenon that sounded like a damn sentence or a phrase.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Because he said they did hear a couple of AVPs, as in they heard voices like
actual
coming out
voices.
of thin air.
Right.
But most of the EVPs, and they ended up getting some ridiculous number, like 400, 500 EVPs, something like that. And he's like, most of them we weren't aware of until we got back to England and were listening back to all the tapes. Because they were there, they actually were there. Steve Mera and Don Phillips were at Keith Linder's house when Keith Linder still lived there on 2 occasions. The first occasion, they were there for 6 days. And the second occasion, they were there for 8 days. And they were living in the house.
Right.
So they had cameras set up everywhere. They had audio running constantly. Yeah. And so they got a lot of evidence.
And what's cool about the ones that Steve got is that, when you hear EVPs, like on television, they have to turn the volume way up. They have to tell you what it's going to say.
Yeah.
And then you hear it and you go, yeah, it does kind of sound like that. These don't really sound like that. They actually sound like a human voice.
It sounds like, you don't have to have anybody tell you what it says.
Yeah, and it sounds like just somebody whispered something, out, or, there's so many of them, you can't really characterize them all.
I know. One of the creepiest ones was the one where and they actually got it on video. They were videotaping just them setting up some equipment. Right. So they weren't even really recording. They were just setting some shit up and recording. And they had the little camera thing and they were kind of doing whatever. And then this voice very clearly says, "It's a camera." Yeah. Just like it was a person, right by the microphone.
Yeah. But that it wasn't. It's not that clear. It's clear, but that there wasn't somebody off camera just whispering into the microphone and then trying to pass it off as a fake EVP. Yeah. It sounds unusual. It doesn't sound...
But in a way that's kind of hard to describe.
Yeah, you just have to hear yourself.
Yeah. But if you're really interested in the Keith Linder case, I don't want to do a whole show about it because I wrote a whole book about it and stuff.
Right, yeah.
And actually, I did a radio interview for My Side of the Universe. I think the show is called, in Utah. And I talked quite a bit about the Keith Linder case, probably about a quarter of the segment that I did.
Before I forget. Yes, Keith Linder got a bum rap on Ghost Adventures.
He did.
If you look,
that was why he called Steve.
That's why he went to Steve. If you watch the Ghost Adventures show, they butcher that investigation.
They did,
and the investigation contradicts itself. Yeah. They're saying there's nothing paranormal here, but Keith Linder's girlfriend's behind it because she used black magic. If she used black magic, that's fucking paranormal.
Yeah.
How can you say that nothing paranormal was going here?
Here's the thing about Ghost Adventures.
And there was no black magic. They just made that shit up.
And the thing about, and this is why maybe I'm kind of don't have as much patience with fucking Ghost Adventures, because I know from talking to Keith Linder and from talking to Steve Mera and stuff like that what shows up on Ghost Adventures when they come to your house and do a quote-unquote investigation, this kind of messed up Keith's life because him and his girlfriend Tina had moved into this house. They had all this paranormal shit going on. They called some different psychics and shit like that, but then they finally got Ghost Adventures in there. Ghost Adventures, like you said, basically did a hatchet job. Yeah. And when the show came out, basically saying, "Oh, we didn't find any paranormal stuff. Oh, maybe they're faking. Oh, but maybe is doing black magic and causing bad mojo or whatever."
Well, if that's true, then they need to get back in there and investigate some more.
Right. Well,
black magic.
After that show aired, she started getting hate mail.
Yeah, and she left, I think.
And she ended up leaving him because she couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, it
pretty much ruined her life.
It looked like to me that Ghost Adventurers did not want to put out a whole episode of positive cases. So they said, some of our cases that we're going to cover, we're going to say they're hoaxes.
Yeah.
All right. So
they look more legit.
So they look more legit. Okay. Right. Whatever.
And I will say that some of the claims that Keith Linder was making about some of the stuff that happened before Ghost Adventures got there, before Steve Mera got there, were pretty outlandish. Not in the sense that I'm saying he was making it up, but they're crazy. Crazy shit happened. Yeah. With all the writing appearing on the wall and his whole office being trashed. there was like all kind of fires and shit like that. So, he was making some
people have kind of said,
extraordinary claims.
Some people were saying, well, is the writing a hoax did he hoax that to get a paranormal investigator in there because no one else was helping him before? And then, was that the bait to get somebody in to investigate it? Nobody knows. Yeah. Only people that actually were there.
But like I said, Steve Mera was there. Don Phillips was there. Yeah. They got a lot of evidence that nothing like super spectacular. Yeah. But stuff did happen right. And they saw it and they got it all down as evidence. So,
stuff like this is just par for the course. That's the name of the paranormal game. You're dealing with a lot of what ifs and maybes sometimes. That just goes along with the court.
Yeah, that's just how it is.
No case is perfect, including the best one, which was Enfield Poltergeist. Yeah. That case was not perfect, but that case was real. That did happen. Just because a couple things were faked. Yeah. Because the girls were fucking around doesn't mean that you should throw that entire case out. When you had cops that saw chairs move and you saw newspaper reporters saw Lego bricks jump up out of the corner and hit people in the head. Yeah. That was some poltergeist.
Yeah, and it happens a lot, particularly where there's young kids involved. Right. There's going to be, especially if the media or somebody like that comes to see it, and then it's not doing anything.
Yeah, the kids don't want to look like an idiot.
Yeah, the kids don't want to look stupid or they want attention or something. So, they'll fake some things. But that doesn't mean everything's fake necessarily. Yeah. All right, so now that we're almost...
Oh, man, we're almost a half hour into the show.
That's okay.
Okay, we got to do the record.
All right, so now we're getting into the case of Borley Rectory. Yeah. Otherwise known as the most haunted house in England. Not anymore, because it's not there anymore. All right. There's such a mystique about this place. And like I said, I remember reading about it when I was a kid in Strange Stories, Amazing Facts, and always just finding it this really creepy story. So let's kind of talk about a little bit of the history of Borley Rectory. Now, it was actually built in 1862. It's in this little town. It's like a little parish called Borley. It's like right on the border of Essex and Suffolk counties. And it was built on the site of a previous rectory, which I believe had burned down, but it was built for the Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull and his wife and 14 children. Yeah. So they had this rectory built for them to move into it. Now, sources vary. Some sources say that the locals in the area were already reporting minor paranormal activity even before the rectory was built. You know what I mean? And even after the rectory was put up, like even before the family moved in, they said, we kept hearing footsteps and there was all this other kind of stuff. So there was apparently some minor paranormal activity before that was even there. And, stuff about maybe the land is haunted or whatever. Yeah. Now, there was evidently a story about the area that at some point, probably in around the 13th century, that this portion of land there had once been a monastery on it. And I don't know if this is the case or not. But apparently in this monastery, there was a monk, and he fell in love with a nun or a novice, and evidently they tried to run away or elope or something like that, and they got caught, and because it was the Middle Ages and the church absolutely did not fuck around, they took the monk and hanged him. Damn. And then they took the nun and they bricked her up alive. Damn. And she died in there. So now I don't know if that really happened. Right. But that's the legend.
That's the legend.
That's the legend.
Well, first off, that bricking up a woman alive, also a nun, that goes back to the Roman times. Yeah. Where they would wall up a Vestal Virgin. Yeah. If she broke her vow. So I'm starting to think that might be a little bit of legend. That might be.
Yeah. And it should be noted too that that same story of bricking up the nun alive in that story and stuff like that has occurred in a couple of fictional, novels and things.
They got that from the ancient Romans.
Right. Like I think it was in a poem by Sir Walter Scott. Yeah. And there was like another novel that had come out a few years before that had a similar story. So that might have been where that came from. Okay. So nothing much happened at first other than like kind of footsteps, sounds of doors closing, stuff like that. Then comes 1900. Now, 3 or 4 of Bull's daughters evidently were coming home from a party or something like that. They're going into the rectory and they see what appears to be a woman in a nun's habit standing out in the yard. And she kind of looks like she has her head down. Now, at first, they say they thought this was a person, and they thought something was the matter with her. So they went over to talk to her, and she apparently faded away. So that was kind of one of the main, and really, the whole time the Bulls were there, and then there was another family there afterward, it's mostly apparition stuff. So the most commonly reported apparitions, a nun walking around with her head down, a phantom carriage with 2 headless coachmen, which, that seems pretty spectacular. So that was seen several times. But then there was also kind of, some sources say there's like a little girl in white, like sometimes you could see her face against the window, or sometimes you could hear her screaming, particularly in one of the bedrooms. So it's mostly that kind of thing while the Bulls are there. Now, evidently the Reverend Bull had taken to, writing down all of these things that happened there. And he reportedly thought that it was kind of amusing. Like he had built this little summer house, or like a little gazebo type of thing out in the yard, so he could go out after dinner and have a cigar and like watch for the ghosts. Maybe I'll see the nun today. You know what I mean? So I think he thought it was kind of neat.
That's not all that unusual.
Reportedly. Yeah. Well,
I thought the poltergeist was neat, even though it scared the shit out of me.
Well, that's what I mean. It's scary. Yeah. Like, sure, it'd be scary if you lived in a house where there's like a phantom carriage with like headless dudes like riding by all the time. But you'd run and you'd immediately want to go back there and look at it again. I'm going to go check this out. Right. Yeah, you would. Because it's like, it's probably not going to hurt you, I don't think. Yeah. So that was kind of the main things were, just minor poltergeist activity, weird noises, stuff like that, and some apparitions. And after the Reverend Bull died, one of his sons took over and lived in there for a while and had a similar types of, experiences. And then his son eventually died in 1928. And then after that, there was a few months gap. And then there was another rector moved in, Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife, and then they moved into the house. Now, they did not report any paranormal activity until, the story goes, Mrs. Smith was cleaning out some type of cabinet or, cupboard or whatever, and she finds like a package that's wrapped in brown paper in the back, like tucked into the back. And she takes it out and unwraps it, and there's a skull in there.
Okay.
Apparently, everywhere says it's a young woman's skull. I'm not sure how that was verified or where they took it or anything like that, but it always says it's a young woman's skull. So after that was found, then it seems like the paranormal activity started up again. Footsteps, hearing knocking on the walls. The servant bells would ring even though they weren't connected to anything. Lights would come on in the windows, all that kind of stuff. Mrs. Smith also said that she saw the horse-drawn carriage. After that happened, she ended up calling the newspaper, the Daily Mirror, and the SPR, the Society for Psychical Research, and asked them to come out and investigate. The Daily Mirror ended up doing like a bunch of articles about it, and they also were the one that sent the infamous Harry Price, the parapsychologist, paranormal researcher, and he was also a magician, sent him out to investigate it too. And it's probably through Harry Price's writings that Borley Rectory became as famous as it did, because he ended up writing, I believe, 2 books on the subject. He was the one that started calling it the most haunted house in England. Okay, so this is basically the source of the stories, is this guy? Yeah. I mean, and primary source. Yeah, he's kind of the primary source, and he was there for a long time. He came along in 1929, I believe, and did some investigations at the place. Okay. And we'll kind of get into that. I guess, we're kind of at the halfway point now, so I think we'll get into the rest of the story after the break. Sounds good. So we're going to take a break right now, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
so significant because we are willing to put pen to paper and conclude at the end of the day that this house is very much haunted and will continue to be haunted for a very long time.
All right, we're back talking about Borley Rectory, England's most haunted house.
Yeah, and we're just now getting down to the nitty-gritty on this case, too.
Yeah.
All right.
So in 1929, Harry Price arrives.
All right.
Now, Harry Price is kind of a controversial figure, I guess you could say, in sort of early paranormal research. Should be noted that he's kind of the first guy to come up with this sort of ghost hunting kit.
Okay.
He did approach things from a very scientific standpoint. But as I said, he was also a magician and a conjurer, which in a way I think is good because you can do some Houdini shit so you can spot when people are faking.
Right.
However, many of his detractors have said that he probably faked things himself just, for better publicity and whatnot. I don't know how true that is. And obviously he's no longer alive.
It's just something to consider.
It's something to consider.
Yeah.
Now, when he arrived to Borley Rectory and started his first investigation, interestingly, even though prior to this, most of the manifestations had been apparitions mostly, but when he arrived, stuff started going in a more poltergeisty type direction.
Okay.
There were, stones and bottles started flying around.
Okay.
Rapping on the walls, in a communicating type of fashion.
Okay, now the stones and the bottles.
Yeah.
Coming from outside the rectory and coming in? Or there's stones inside the rectory flying around?
I think stones and bottles inside the rectory flying around.
All right.
So I don't know if anyone actually really saw where they came from.
Okay.
It's just that you kind of just saw them in flight suddenly.
Okay, because stones coming from the outside in is actually a pretty common poltergeist.
It is very common, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I went into that in The Unseen Hand. There's I had a whole section on stone throwing poltergeist.
Yeah.
And it was a factor in a lot of cases, too, that weren't even in that section.
Okay.
But yeah, it is a pretty common thing.
Okay.
Now, Mrs. Smith, the Reverend's wife, who was living there at the time, she has gone on record as stating that even though she had seen apparitions and stuff like that, she thought that all the new poltergeisty shit that was going on was Harry Price doing it.
Faking it.
She thought he was faking it.
She thought that, right.
Right.
Did she have any evidence?
See, I don't know. But it was her belief. Now, she did believe that the shit was haunted.
Right.
Because she said, I've seen the Phantom Carriage and all that stuff. And I think she'd even seen the Nun also.
She thought he was adding to it.
But she thought he was adding to it. I don't know if that's the case, but that was her opinion.
Okay. I'd like to have more detail about what it is she thinks she saw.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit more about that later on.
Okay.
Not so much about her, but about other people. So now, the Smith family were really only there, I think they were only there for 2 years, and then they got the fuck out.
Okay.
Now, after they left, because I guess they just couldn't take it. It was too much going on. So after the Smiths left, it actually took quite a while for the village of Borley to find another rector to take over the post, just because the house had started to gain such a bad reputation of being haunted. But finally, in 1930, they got the Reverend Lionel Algernon Foister
Okay. You can't have a name more British than that.
That is the Britishest.
God,
no, it could only be more British if the last name was hyphenated.
Okay. All right. I mean, that motherfucker should have had the first name Nigel. Or something like that.
Lionel Algernon Foister.
Yeah,
the Reverend
Nigel.
Lionel Algernon Foister. Otherwise known as Nigel.
Yeah.
So,
just for our British listeners, if you ever had a kid named Nigel and you sent him to school in the United States, he'd come. That poor kid.
I can't even think of that name without thinking of that XTC song, "Making Plans for Nigel."
Yeah, Nigel.
I love that song.
It's not a bad name. It's just.
Or either I think of that, or I think of Spinal Tap.
Yes, that's what I think of. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I can't help but think of Spinal Tap. Okay, so the very British, the very Reverend Lionel Algernon Foister, he moves into the rectory with his much younger wife, Marianne, and their adopted teenage daughter, Adelaide. Now, it seems that as soon as the Foisters moved in, that the paranormal activity ramped up a lot. They also heard the footsteps. They also heard the servant bell ringing, even though it was disconnected. They also said they heard weird music, like they couldn't tell where it was coming from. And they also reported poltergeist activity, stones and bottles flying around, windows breaking, objects disappearing and reappearing in other places.
That's classic poltergeist.
Wine turning into ink, which I thought was very odd.
Wine turning into ink?
Yeah.
Huh, never heard of that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that a poltergeist
I have seen it come up in other poltergeists, but it's not common.
Having seen poltergeist phenomena myself, most likely when wine turns into ink, what it is the poltergeist takes the wine away.
And puts ink there instead.
So keep your shorts on. It's not transmutation.
Keep your shorts on.
Yeah.
Although, is that any less crazy? Like when I'm transmuting wine into ink than just taking all the wine out immediately and putting ink in there?
That's how it would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it does seem easier to do it.
Oh yeah, it's going to cheat. That's what it's going to do.
Because poltergeists are big dirty cheaters.
Well, it's just a demonstration designed to impress you and to put you into wonderment of how that happened. Because whenever the one that we encountered or in our family, that's when it did something. It was done as a demonstration. You were supposed to see it, and you're supposed to go, "How the hell did it do that?" Well,
and most parapsychologists would argue that the whole reason that a poltergeist, and I don't really want to talk about it as though it's a separate entity because I don't think it is, but the reason that a poltergeist does what it does is to get a reaction out of people, which further fuels.
Sure. Yeah, further helps fuel it.
Ramps the energy up. It ramps up the emotions.
I think what it does is it ramps up the confidence of the poltergeist agent who's unconsciously producing it. Actually.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
That's what it's doing.
So it even kind of started doing violent shit. Evidently, Marianne, the wife, she got thrown out of bed a few times. The daughter was locked in a room from the outside when no one had done it. There was no key to that door. It couldn't be locked or whatever. So it started to do more violent shit. Oh, and also Marianne got thrown out of bed a few times, but also she had a mattress slammed on top of her like it was trying to suffocate her or something like that. So she said. Now, the weird thing about it, though, and this was one of the things that creeped me out about this case when I saw the pictures of it from that long ago Reader's Digest book. Well, I call it long ago. It's sitting I'm looking right at it. It's right there on my it's right there on my shelf. I still have it.
All right.
But apparently the poltergeist started writing on the walls. Writing started to appear on the walls. And there are pictures of it, and I'll put pictures of it in the YouTube video, but there were pictures of it in the book, and I think that's what creeped me out the most. Most of it you couldn't read. It just kind of looked like loops and scribble.
Yeah.
But some of it looked like it was asking Marianne for help. It would say something like, "Marianne, please get help," or "please for hopes and prayers," or, things like that.
Would people see the writing appear?
See, that I'm not sure about. Because if you see the pictures, it looks as though, because there's little block letters, which I assume is Marianne's handwriting. So she would ask it a question, she would write on the wall, I don't understand why, because it was messy and she couldn't read it. And she would put, "I don't understand, please tell me more." And then there'd be more chicken scratch underneath. And sometimes it would be legible, most of the time not.
And what happened when they weren't looking at it? They would look back and it's there.
Like I said, I've just seen the pictures of it. I don't know.
That's how it happened in my case in Mammoth Mountain.
Right.
You know what I mean? You shut the shades, turn the lights off, go downstairs, get in the car. You look up at the main window. The lights are back on. The shades are open. Yeah. You say, oh, man, fuck that. You see some blue haze in there. Okay, let's get out of here. Go get some pizza. You come back. You go up there. Lights are still on. Shades still open. You look, and it's written on the window in wax from a twist tie. Go. So we didn't see it being written. You
didn't see it write it, but there was nobody there.
It was nobody there. It was already there. Now, Lois says she saw it writing it. But me and Red go, no, there's no way you could have seen that because we didn't.
Well, I've seen pictures of the outside of the place. I don't think you would have been able to see it from the parking lot.
Misremembered it, She's in her 70s and she's misremembering it. We didn't see it written. We found it when it was already written.
Yeah, you found it already written and nobody had been in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that seemed like the case here. There was like writing evidently appearing on the walls. I don't think they were looking at it and then it wrote, or they just turned around and then it was there. I don't know. So Reverend Foister actually tried to do a couple exorcisms on the house, neither of which worked. Reportedly, during one of the exorcisms, a stone came flying out of nowhere and whacked him on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Almost like, knock that shit.
Now, that was witnessed?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Nobody knows if that was the stone.
I'm just saying, like I said, a lot of the stories about Borley Rectory are like repeated from other sources. So a lot of them just say, hey, he got hit by a stone about the size of a fist.
But you don't know how many witnesses.
But I don't know if other people saw that happen or if he just said it happened or if just the family said it happened. I don't know.
That's the problem with this kind of stuff. You run into this a lot when you're investigating.
Yeah, and that's why when I was writing The Unseen Hand, I was having such a hard time. It's just because so many things get repeated and you don't really know where, unless you could find the original sources, which is sometimes hard. Right. You don't really know, like, okay, did they really see this or are they just repeating a story? What they heard or something like that. And this case is really a lot. There was a lot of that going on.
You can't throw the case out.
No.
But you just have to be aware that the witness testimony in most of these cases is very cloudy. You don't know who saw this or where, you know what I mean? Like, yes, this man was hit with a stone. Well, wait a minute. Who witnessed this? Who's telling you this? The guy who got hit with a stone?
Yeah.
Was he the only one in the room and he came down? Did he actually say this? We don't know.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like that might have just been something he reported or something the family reported because now Harry Price came back again. He had been there with the Smith family and now he came back to investigate again when the Foisters were there. And he thought that Marianne was acting as essentially the poltergeist focus. Okay. He wasn't sure if she was conscious of it or if it was unconscious, but he definitely thought that it was probably her, and he theorized that that's probably why the paranormal activity ramped up after the Foisters moved in.
Now, if we have
more than had been before.
Now, just in case we have new listeners that haven't been following this show for a long time, can you explain to them what a poltergeist focus is?
It's basically just the person around whom poltergeist activity is happening. I mean, we think that the person that's the focus is unconsciously causing the disturbances through some type of unconscious psychokinesis.
Yeah, usually it's called recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. Yeah. Which is an unconscious psychokinesis that happens at random.
So I think he thought that was the case here. But then the weird thing was that Marianne said that even though she thought that some of the phenomena was genuine, she thought also that Harry Price and maybe her husband were doing some of the shit themselves. Although, it must be said, I don't know how trustworthy this family are, really. Okay. Because it turned out that later on, Marianne admitted that she'd faked a bunch of shit for pranks. Also, she was sleeping with the guy that was lodging in the house, their tenant. And she later admitted that she'd kind of been using the paranormal activity, whether it was real or not, to kind of allay, to kind of get attention off of her and her little shenanigans.
She's using it as a distraction.
Pretty much.
Some dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, here's the funny thing. I was watching a British documentary about this, and this is the only place that I ever saw this mentioned. And so I don't know if this is true, so take this with a grain of salt. Okay. But apparently this whole Foister marriage, the Reverend and her, was a little weird because, I mean, like I said, he was much older than her. He was about her father's age.
Right.
And so she was banging this lodger.
Yeah.
Now, later on, the Reverend, her husband, gave her and the lodger money to open a flower shop in town. And they both ran the flower shop and lived in town together during the week. Okay. And then she would come back to the rectory on the weekends and, like, be with her husband and kid.
Oh, yeah, it was,
Yeah, which I thought was kind of like...
It was like a free love type thing.
Yeah, so I guess apparently he was just kind of like, whatevs.
And they had an adopted teenage daughter, too?
Yes.
It was weird. It's kind of weird. Maybe he's an older guy and he's collecting young women.
I don't know. It's just, it seemed like, and like I said, I don't know if that's true because I saw that like on one documentary.
We don't know the people. We don't know the people.
Yeah, and they've passed away, obviously. Right. So the Foister family ended up being there until 1935, and then Lionel Foister kind of got sick and he couldn't do the rectory thing anymore, so they moved out. Now, after that happened, Harry Price took the interesting tack of renting Borley Rectory for an entire year. And he ran an ad in the paper, and he said he was looking for people of leisure and intelligence.
Yeah, to go in there and stay?
To go in there and stay.
We should have done it.
I know. Well, this was way before we were born.
Should have been us.
This was like 1937 or something. Yeah, so we'll have to get a time machine and go back and do that shit. So he actually ended up getting a whole bunch of, it was mostly students. I think he ended up getting about 48 of them. They weren't there 24/7, but he had them there in rotating shifts. And like I said, he's sort of like the godfather of like paranormal researching or whatever, just because he came up with the ghost hunting kit. He had like all these typed instructions to tell them like how to investigate the house and how they needed to document everything and stuff like that. So they were there for a year, and apparently some crazy shit happened. They documented, but nothing like super, super crazy. Mostly just noises, footsteps, lights, that type of thing. Nothing super major.
In the 30s, they didn't even have portable audio recording equipment, so
no,
it'd be hard to collect evidence in the 30s. Yeah, they had decent cameras.
They had okay cameras, yeah. So later on, Price and some of these students, they decided to do some seances on the property. Now, one of the seances, they get, allegedly, the spirit of a nun. It should be noted significantly, this nun is not the nun that was bricked up.
Right.
This nun...
I don't think there was a nun bricked up.
I don't think there was either. I think that was just a story that they took and they just like kind of romanticized it, and it kind of just was a local legend type of thing. So I don't think that whole nun bricked up in the wall.
No, that's too Roman. They're talking about Vestal virgins.
Yeah.
Right.
But he apparently contacts a woman who was a nun. Her name was Marie Lair, and she was French. And apparently she had fallen in love with someone from the Waldegrove family. Now, the Waldegrove family were real. They did live in that area of Borley, and actually in Borley Church, which is right across from, which is still there, and it's across from the site where Borley Rectory was. It was built in the 12th century, and there's actually the Waldegrave family tomb is still in there. Like, you can still see it. So evidently, she was in love with one of them. And then somebody ended up murdering her and either burying her on the grounds or throwing her down a well or something like that. So now they're thinking, well, there wasn't so much this whole, nun bricked up in the wall, but maybe this is the nun that's the ghost that all these people have been seeing. Now, weirdly, he also said that during another one of these seances, they contacted this male spirit with the very weird name, I think it was Sunex Amurez or something like that. I was like, okay, already. Yeah. Now, he says, at this particular, they're with their little Ouija board or whatever, he says, I'm going to burn this shit down tonight. Okay, cool. Right? Now, did the house burn down that night? It did not. Okay. However, 11 months later, by then, Harry Price's lease was up and they had moved out, him and the students, and this other guy had moved in named Captain W.H. Gregson. Now, he was moving in and he was putting his books in the library or whatever, and he either accidentally knocked over an oil lamp or the oil lamp fell over like in a ghostly fashion. I'm not really sure. So like sources have different things. And the shit didn't burn completely down, but it was gutted to a point where they couldn't save it.
Damn.
So old Sunex Amura is talking through the Ouija board. He's like, I'm going to burn it down tonight, but I'll burn it down about a year from now.
Okay.
But it didn't burn down.
Just burn it.
It burned up.
It just burned the shit out of it.
It just burned the shit out of it so that nobody could live in it.
Okay.
And that was in 1939, that fire. And there are rumors that locals said that after the place was gutted, they still saw the nun, like, in the windows every now and then and shit like that. Now, in 1944, they raised it. And there's nothing there now. Okay. Now, the church is still there. There's actually a really interesting, I was watching this earlier today. I think the guy's name is Christopher Halton, I want to say, or something from, like that. And he thought this was really weird because Borley Church is still there. Like I said, it's from the 12th century. He's like, and a lot of paranormal activity has been reported in here too, but Harry Price never like walked across the lawn to investigate over there, which he thought was very odd. And evidently there's been a lot of, and they actually interviewed some people that had been in there since, recently and reported, hearing footsteps. There was even in 1975, the BBC did sort of a little documentary, and they had an investigation in the church, obviously because the rectory wasn't there by that time. And they recorded some pretty creepy sound. They recorded footsteps when there was no one in there. They recorded what was clearly the sound of like a door slamming. They recorded what sounded like a person sighing. Like it was just like... like that. It sounded pretty much just like that, except a man. So there was a lot of stuff going on in there, and it's weird because it doesn't really get mentioned. They even had this one guy who was talking about how back in the 80s, him and his friend Ian had actually they were going to go camp on the site of Borley Rectory just for shits and giggles. So they set up a tent overnight, and they're sleeping in there. And they said that they started hearing people talking, and then they got out of the tent, and then they started hearing like someone's hands on the outside of the canvas. And then they got out of the tent and there was nobody there. And then they got freaked out and started running away. And Ian apparently turned around and saw two figures, like two in white. He's like, it was a man and a woman. And they were just standing there, like by the side, by the church, and they were just like looking at him. And he said it freaked him the fuck out. And his friend that was telling the story said, I've never heard a man scream like that.
Well, what did they do? Did they approach the people in white? Or
no, they ran the fuck away.
That might have just been real people, though.
It might have been, but he said it really did not look like real people. He said they were just standing there and they just had like these weird like expressions on their faces. And they said when they went back the next day to pick up their tent, he said the tent had all this really weird, like all these weird stains on it. He said, I'm not going to be cliche and say it was blood and stuff like that, but he's like, there were reddish stains on the tent that weren't there before. He's like, and I don't know what that was.
At least they weren't whitish stains.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, so, after the place was torn down, and because Harry Price wrote 2 books about it, and there were all these stories circulating about it, so like I said, it kind of became really probably one of the best known haunted houses in England for sure. And just a really popular ghost story. Now, the Society for Psychical Research.
These guys. All right.
They decided, obviously by the time they decided to kind of look more into this, the rectory was gone.
These are, this is a cool outfit, but they failed to investigate one of the best paranormal cases of all times, which was the Enfield case. They didn't even spend any time at it. Something may be going on over there, but then, who gives a shit? that was their attitude.
It's not like it's our job or anything.
Yeah.
No, I'm just,
Well, the guys involved in that case, we don't really, believe them, but, fuck it. Who gives a shit? I don't know, I just think when it came to the Enfield case, their attitude that they had towards it, they wouldn't send anybody down there to spend a couple of days at the house, which always makes me believe that they already had their minds made up.
They may have.
Yeah.
And they may have in this particular case. As I said, when they became interested, I think they became interested in it because of the kind of public fascination with it that came in the wake of Harry Price's books about it. And after it was torn down, they sort of went through all of Harry Price's data and like all the stuff that he had come up with while he was there. And most of them came to the conclusion that they thought pretty much all of the poltergeist activity was just naturalistic explanations of, just weird acoustics.
This is SPR saying
the SPR saying this. That it was just rats in the walls, things like that.
Yeah.
And they said some of the other shit, like the poltergeist shit, they straight up pretty much said that they thought Harry Price was faking it.
Right.
That he was doing it. Because like I said, he was a magician.
But they never come there to disprove
Well, it was gone. It was gone by then.
Right, it's gone.
Yeah.
That's true.
Now, it should be noted that a couple members of the SPR broke with their comrades on this and, said no, they backed Price up and they think that he did a good investigation. Right. However, the majority of the SPR at the time thought that he had faked it or that he had embellished a lot of things to make it a better story.
That was the thing with the Enfield haunting. I mean, Maurice Grosse was SPR. And he said, yeah, it's here, man. Come check this out. They didn't care. Yeah. They wouldn't even send, they wouldn't send one of their own skeptics to go down there and observe it, which I would have. Yeah. If I was a skeptic, I would have gone to the Enfield house to go.
Well, that's
I'm going to debunk this shit. I'm going to be there for a couple of days. I'm going to show you there's nothing to this. That's what I would have said. That's what I would have done. But I've seen poltergeist myself. I know what would have happened. The phenomena would have tapered off a little bit for probably about 6 to 12 hours. And then it slowly would have started ramping back up. The skeptic would have gone in denial. I've seen it before. And then all of a sudden it gets to the point where they can't deny it. They fucking lose it and they want to leave because they're coming face to face with something that they have convinced themselves could not happen. And when it stares them right in the face, they kind of have an identity crisis, Yeah. We saw people see it and go, nah, man, I'm out of here. And they would just leave. Never saw them again.
But yeah, I think that was kind of, I don't know, maybe the case here because I don't really think the SPR really investigated the house while it was still standing.
Right.
Now, I'm not
I can understand there's not much they can do in this case.
Yeah, in this case.
I'm mostly talking
about. It burned down,
Yeah, I'm mostly talking about how they botched Enfield. Yeah. But, But those people are all dead now. The SPR of today is not going to be the same people.
Well, yeah, no.
Pretty much all dead.
And I'm not going to say, while I do think. Because the thing about Borley Rectory is that if you look at pretty much any skeptical website, even some non-skeptical websites, even some paranormal websites, will tell you that a lot of the stuff about Borley Rectory is probably exaggerated, particularly a lot of the stuff that Marianne came up with, because she later on said, yeah, I faked a bunch of that shit.
Well, I'm going to tell you just based on what you've said so far about this case, if that's a genuine case, it's just a minor haunting. So even if it's real, I would say, yeah, that's a little one.
That's the thing. Yeah. I kind of feel like maybe there was paranormal activity going on there, but it wasn't
a big deal.
Super impressive.
Right.
So maybe there was kind of an incentive for when investigators went in there, when people went in there, like, oh, we need to ramp this up a little bit.
Right, yeah.
To make it seem more exciting. Maybe. And I feel like a lot of the stuff, like I said, about the history of the area with the nun and everything like that, they pretty much know that that's not true, that that's just a local legend.
Not to say that American ghosts are superior to British ghosts. But the Bobby Mackey case is more impressive than this one, or the reports that came out of the Bobby Mackey.
Now, like I said, it's kind of interesting to me that I didn't even know that Borley Church was still there, and that there was actually a lot of reported paranormal activity over there. Mostly noises, cold spots, footsteps, hearing voices and things like that. So there's a lot of that shit going on, and they had like a lot of interviews with people that had seen various things. Yeah. They also talked about a guy who had been working there and saw the nun on 4 separate occasions. And he didn't know he didn't know anything about the Phantom Nun, evidently. And he actually thought it was a person.
Right.
Like he said, it looked like a solid person. So he didn't really think anything of it the first 3 times. But then the 4th time, he was like, well, that's kind of weird. So he went up to talk to her, and then she just kind of vanished.
Right.
And then he was like, oh, shit, that was a ghost. He didn't realize. He thought it was a person. That's what he said anyway.
But it's not grabbing people and trying to shove their heads down into a sink and people seeing blood.
Right. Yeah, it's mostly just
minor apparitions and some
You
audio
see him in the kitchen.
Stuff.
And like I said, most of the poltergeist type stuff didn't really start coming about until Harry Price got there. And then when the Foister family got there and was talking about who's throwing me out of bed.
And when they left, the poltergeist activity left from the scene also.
Pretty much.
So it's dependent on those people. Yeah.
Now, while I was researching this, and I found this really cool thing. Evidently, there's this guy, and his name is Ashley Thorpe, I think his name is. And he spent the last 6 years making a movie about Borley Rectory.
Yeah.
And it's funded entirely through Indiegogo, Kickstarter, what have you. And it was apparently going to start out as a short film, but then, he got more backing and he got some kind of big stars behind it. Julian Sands as the narrator and stuff.
Yeah.
So he ended up making it. I think it's a 75-minute movie, and it premiered at I can't remember what film festival it was, but it premiered last year, 2017.
Okay. You said it looked awesome.
And I've seen clips of it. And actually, if you're watching the YouTube video, the little bit that I put at the beginning of this little clip of video is actually from the trailer of that. And what he did was he filmed the actors in front of a green screen. And so all of the backgrounds, all of the inside of the house, obviously, and stuff like that is all computer animated. But then he made it, he filmed it in black and white. Everybody that's in it has like very period 20s and 30s Universal monster movie type costuming, type makeup. And it's just got this really cool, like flickering, smoky, black and white kind of look to it. It's really beautiful.
Now, were these guys able to dig up any more information about the case that wasn't found anywhere else?
You know what? Now, they did get to go to the Harry Price archives. And there's a library, the library that's in London. They have the archives there. So evidently they dug pretty deep, because it's a fictional film, but he calls it like a docudrama. It's like a docudrama, okay. Yeah. So it's kind of like it's narrated, but it's a fictionalized account. But the stuff that happened in there is shit that was really happening. And actually, I really kind of want to see this movie, because from seeing like little clips of it and stuff, it looks really, really cool. Oh. And I think it's really cool that he spent all this time making it. He's a pretty young guy, right. And he spent 6 years working on it, and it really shows. It looks really gorgeous. So
it's an elusive case. It may or may have not happened. If it's true, it's most likely just a very minor haunting. I would think that that's probably more of what it is, say, versus a poltergeist case. I don't really buy the poltergeist reports, things.
It does
seem too elusive.
It does seem like the most common reports, even back from the old days, were of apparitions, mostly of apparitions, right. And just like minor shit like footsteps and lights coming on in the windows.
It's more likely that if there's anything paranormal's going on there, then that's what it is. That it's going to be just apparitions,
right? And
this whole these legendary tales of nuns being walled up, just very unlikely.
And the thing about that, too, that I forgot to mention is that the Reverend Bull's family, because remember he had all those kids, later on, a lot of them said a lot of the things that are attributed to them in a lot of the Borley Rectory stories, they said that shit never happened.
Yeah, people added to it.
Yeah, they said people added shit. Just like, we never said that there was a nun that was bricked up. They either said that we didn't say that, or that we just made that up to make the house seem more romantic or whatever. So, a lot of the shit about a lot of the story about this place, that gets repeated, some of it, when you look into it, is not really legitimate.
There. Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Like you said, I think there might have been some kind of minor shit going on. Right. Maybe people did see apparitions.
Yeah, but most likely nothing happened.
I think maybe it's most likely nothing. It's a cool story, though. I mean, I've always been fascinated by Borley Rectory. And like I said, especially like the writing on the walls and shit like that, even though I think that was probably part of the shit that Marianne faked.
To be open-minded, I'm going to put it 75-25. 75% chance nothing happened. 25% chance it was just a minor haunting
that had stuff later added onto it.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff later. Yeah. And maybe it didn't last that long.
Probably, I kind of agree with you on that. All right, we're getting to the end of the show, so we will wrap up this episode about Borley Rectory and various other ghost stories. Remember, if you like the show, to like, share, subscribe, share around to all your friends on all your social media. Also, be sure to check out our Zazzle store, zazzle.com/13o'clock, and we have t-shirts and a tote bag of all different designs that you can check out if you want to. And also, if you'd like to financially support the show, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast, or go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account. Also, be sure to check out our last movie review, which was the Lone Wolf and Cubs 6-movie series, if you haven't seen it yet. And that'll do it for episode 87.
See you guys around.
Bye.
Don't go down to the Borley Rectory, where things are a little creepy now. Don't go down to the Borley Rectory, dance with the dead. Don't go down to the Borley Rectory, where things are a little scary. And don't go down to the Borley Rectory, where spirits never rest, where spirits are in jest.
Accidents.